In today's video, we're going to look at Chelsea-Newcastle's 1-1 draw in pre-season. A few things that I noticed, a few positives from the first half, and then a few things that I noticed in the second half that maybe weren't so positive, but let's get into it. I think the main thing to take from this game were the shapes used and the rotations used by Pochettino's Chelsea. So as you can see here, this is how the starting lineup was in a 4-2-3-1. Enzo and Castagne in the two-man pivot, and Nkunku technically as the 10, and then Maatsen on the right, Mudryk on the left. But as you can see in this video that I'm about to show, Nkunku would sort of join by going to the left side of a box midfield, and Maatsen would become the right side of a box midfield, creating that box in the middle, as you can see there, of Nkunku, Maatsen, Castagne and Enzo. That would allow Mudryk to offer the width on the left, James to offer the width on the right, and that back three to become a back three of Cucurella, Bashir Humphreys and Chalobah. So then having this box midfield for the second phase of build-up, so you'd have the first phase of build-up through Cucurella, Bashir and Chalobah with the two-man pivot. You'd then create the box midfield to split the lines, either coming from the back line into the top of the box or having the box midfield build up from in phase two of the build up, and then obviously Mudryk and James and Jackson all making dangerous runs in behind, and that made us a lot more vertical than usual as well. Another thing I noticed a lot in the first half was the amount that we were trying to sort of mix up the patterns of play, where we'd go short, make some bounce passes in the midfield, in that box midfield. You'd see a lot of the time Maatsen bounce it into the middle, and then that's when the vertical passes would go over the top to Jackson, Mudryk, and at times Reece, just to create that attacking threat vertically as well as playing through like short 1-2 bursts. So the main points for this game, Maatsen playing in another new position on that right-hand side. He worked really, really well. I as much as he scored 2 goals against Wrexham, and that was an impressive game, this is the most impressed I was by Maatsen in a game, just because him coming off that right-hand side, inverting into that box midfield, he was so comfortable on the ball, bursts of pace. He could cover defensively from that right-hand side, because obviously Reece would sometimes be out of position. He'd then cover behind Reece when Reece was found out wide. He'd come in and cover those positions well. And I just think him in that box midfield was really nice to see. And I think Pochettino really likes Maatsen from what we've heard in the press. He said he's really happy with him so far. The fact that he can play multiple different positions, I think that's going to really help Maatsen in terms of making a place for himself in this squad, as he could always play left back, invert into midfield from left back. He could play as a normal left back. He could play as a left back, providing that width on the left if Mudryk's not playing. He can also play on that right wing where he can invert inside. He can also play on the left wing instead of Mudryk and have a different left back playing. So he's got loads of different positions. I think, to be fair, Pochettino would even test him in midfield, but I think he prefers him inverting into midfield, so he's not taking up one of those central midfielder slots technically. But Maatsen, very impressive. For me, his best game in a Chelsea shirt in this pre-season, and Pochettino clearly likes him, so let's hope he stays. Next point is Nicholas Jackson. Not too much to go into. Another goal, very instinctive finish, very good running behind, which was played by Maatsen with the assist into him. An instinctive finish, didn't really think about it, just slotted it into that bottom right-hand corner. Very good. Brilliant runs in behind the entire first half, and he was just being a menace. There was a point in time in that game where he tracked out all the way out to the right wing and got in a duel with basically 2 players, and ended up coming out the other end in a situation that you would have never thought he'd come out away with the ball, but he did. And it just reminded me of Diego Costa against West Brom, where we were 0-0 and Costa scored to win the game 1-0 for Chelsea in the 80th minute. It just reminds me of that menacing striker play where he makes something out of nothing, and I'm just very impressed with Jackson so far. He looks like he's going to be a very good coup for Chelsea at 30 million, and very impressive so far, and I think Pochettino feels the same way. Next up, we have the width that we was offering, which again, this is a Pochettino blueprint that you usually see. Usually it would be both fullbacks pushing up, but when Mudryk's on the pitch, he likes to offer that width on the left. So in this scenario, it was Mudryk on the left-hand side and Reece offering the width on the right-hand side. So that's obviously what happened in terms of the shape. And then you had, instead of that meant that the left back, so in this scenario it was Cucurella, he was the one forming the back three rather than a half back coming in to make a back three, which Pochettino used to do at Spurs. So these sort of patterns, it's not necessarily about who inverts where, but usually in attack he wants to create that 3-2 5 shape that a lot of elite teams are doing at the minute, or more typically that 3-4-3 with the wing backs as being the like right and left mids. So with the width from Mudryk and Reece, but obviously they're very far pushed up, so it looks more like a 3-2-5, which a lot of elite teams are playing at the minute. Mudryk looked to be isolated a lot of the time in a good way. He looked like he was drifting out wide so that he could receive the switch and he could then play out from that switch and go 1v1 with his defender to make things happen. So that was very good. And Mudryk looked very menacing again. So very strong signs from him. And I think Pochettino is going to like using him as that left-hand side width creator. One other thing I didn't mention with that is with Mudryk and Reece holding the width, these are usually the only players that are playing outside of the tilt dynamic for Chelsea. So if you don't know what the tilt dynamic is, I'd strongly recommend that you look it up because it looks like it's going to be a strong feature of Pochettino's Chelsea this season. Basically, it's where all players tilt to one side of the pitch. So they're all playing very narrow and they're all very tight together so that they can bounce passes really quickly and fast interchange to get out of tight areas and get onto the attack quickly. But having one of these two playing outside of the tilt dynamic means that when the switch goes over, they're isolated. So this is very good for Mudryk. If Chelsea are playing as a right side tilt and they're playing on that right-hand side, they then get that one long ball from, say, Enzo or Reece or somebody who has that quality to play that long pass, cross-pitch into Mudryk. He's then isolated 1v1 with the fullback and he can get at him and he can get in on goal and make something happen. So this is very good from Chelsea, and this is something that I think is going to be a strong feature for Pochettino's Chelsea this season. Then in the second half, with subs, I think it just disrupted the fluidity of the game. I think patterns that were meant to be 2 or 3 passes quicker slowed down when the likes of Enzo got subbed off, because a pass that Enzo would play vertically in one pass, that it was taking 2 or 3 passes because the likes of Gallagher, who I actually was impressed with yesterday. I think he played well. I think his intensity was good. And the likes of Cassidy at times, they didn't want to play that long ball that Enzo would play so effortlessly. So there was times where they would interchange the ball 2 or 3 times in that midfield, too many times before getting it out to the wide areas. So I think that slowed us down. I think we looked a little bit void of ideas at that point. So I think Enzo makes a massive difference, which we all know. But also just like a lot of the rhythm was gone because we brought off a lot of the first team starting players. The likes of Burstow came on to give him some minutes, which was good to see. And I think that there's not too much to talk about in the second half. I think the main thing I noticed was too many passes in the midfield, destroying the patterns of play and just slowing us down a little bit, but not too much to point on. I think overall it was a good result. Newcastle had a very strong side out for the entire thing, really. They only really made subs in the last 20 minutes. And they was only really missing Bruno Guimaraes and maybe 1 or 2 others. I'm trying to think who else might have been missing, but there was a very strong side either way. Pope obviously only played the second half, but he made some very good saves in that second half. So yeah, easily could have come away with a win if it weren't for Pope. I think we were the better side and still unbeaten under Pochettino. So there you go. Let me know your takeaways from this game. I'd be very interested to see what you think. So please do leave a comment, like and subscribe, as it really does help me out. And yeah, let me know what you think of the last 3 games for Chelsea in pre-season and what you hope to see in the next 2 Chelsea pre-season games before we play that all-important game against Liverpool. So leave a like, subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time.